What is happening, everybody? I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and welcome back to Dragon Age 2 Lore. So, as always, this is not a main episode of the Let's Play. This is going to be a lore reading discussion kind of episode. So, if that's not something you're interested in, go ahead and click away now and wait for the main episode of the Let's Play. If that is something you're interested in, then let's read up on some creatures. So, Arcane Horror. Upon ascending to the second floor of the tower, we were greeted by a gruesome sight. A ragged collection of bones wearing the robes of one of the senior enchanters. I had known her for years, watched her raise countless apprentices, and now she was a mere puppet for some demon. Transcribed from a tale told by a Templar in Antiva City, 713 Storm. Demons, of course, have no form in our world. When they enter, either where the veil is particularly thin or through blood magic summoning, they must take possession of a body. When a pride demon takes control of the corpse of a mage, an arcane horror is born. Although they appear to be little more than bones, these are fierce creatures, possessing not only all the spellcasting abilities of a living mage, but also the capacity to heal and even command other animated corpses. Rage Demon. Encountered in the Fade, the true form of a rage demon is a frightening sight, a thing of pure fire. Its body seemingly made of amorphous lava, and its eyes two pinpricks of baleful light radiating from its core. The abilities of such a demon center on the fire it generates. It burns those who come near, and the most powerful of its kind are able to lash out with bolts of fire and even firestorms that can affect entire areas. Fortunately, even powerful rage demons are less intelligent than most other varieties. Their tactics are simple. Attack an enemy on sight with as much force as possible until it perishes. Some rage demons carry over their heat-based abilities into possessed hosts, but otherwise the true form is mostly seen outside of the Fade when it's specifically summoned by a mage to do his bidding. One thing that's always interesting to me about these games is once you start knowing the different caliber of demon, you start to know what they are and what they create. So how the Pride Demon creates the Arcane Horror, the Shades are Sloth Demons, I believe, or Hunger Demons. And then there's the Envy Demon too. It's really interesting to know what creates what, because then once you see them in the game, you can identify it. Like you see a Arcane Horror and you're like, ah, that is a Pride Demon that possessed the corpse of a mage. It adds like a little interesting thing to it. Shade. It has often been suggested that the only way for a demon to affect the world of the living is by possessing a living, or once living body, but this is not always true. Indeed, a shade is one such creature, a demon in its true form that has adapted to affect the world around it. My hypothesis is this. We already know that many demons become confused when they pass through the veil into our world. They are unable to tell the living from the dead, the very static nature of our universe being confusing to a creature that is accustomed to a physically defined entirely by emotion and memory. Most demons seek to immediately seize upon anything they perceive as life, jealously attempting to possess it. But what of those that do not? What of those that encounter no life, or fail to possess a body? What of those that are more cautious by their nature? These demons watch, they lurk, they envy. In time, such a demon will learn to drain energy from the psyche of those it encounters, just as it did in the Fade. Once it has drained enough, it has the power to manifest and will forever after be known as a shade. Such a creature spurns possession. It instead floats as a shadow across its piece of land, preying upon the psyche of any who cross its path. Perhaps it believes it's still in the Fade. There is evidence to believe this is so. A shade will weaken the living by its very proximity. If it focuses its will, it can drain a single target very quickly. Some have even been known to assault the minds of a living victim, causing confusion or horror and making the target ripe for the kill. The tragedy of a shade is perhaps that, once it has drained a target whole, its appetite is only heightened rather than slaked. From the journal of former senior enchanter Malleus, once of the Circle of Ravane, declared apostate in 920 Dragon Age. Yeah, there was a shade in Dragon Age Origins inside the Brazilian forest that had been luring visitors into that camp and sapping their wool to make them tired, so then they would pass out in the camp, and they would just immediately be drained, dead, when they slept. And that particular shade was even powerful enough to cause hallucinations. So it says here that they can cause confusion or horror. They can also insert visions and make you see an alternate version of reality, because the Shade did that to our warden inside the Brazilian forest. In fact, my whole party was seeing things that weren't there, including Win, who's a very high-level mage, so if Win was falling for the trip, then there isn't many people that wouldn't. Yeah, Shades are pretty powerful if you let them out their way. So these are items. I'm not going to read the description of the DLC items. Seems like a waste of our time, but what we will do, check these sections. So we did get an update on the Enigma of Kirkwall. Which one is the update? Let's see. Right, here's the update. In the back alleys of Lowtown, you can find extraordinary things. Priceless tomes of knowledge can be bought with a handful of gold. The Chant of Archon Levias, a whole chapter of the Midnight Compendium. Some of these books were thought lost forever. And these are no forgeries. I've verified their authenticity myself. The fences have no inkling that what they're selling has value. Where did these books come from? After several failed attempts, I got my answer underneath the city. There is a hive of hidden passages in Kirkwall's sewers. Now and then, a lucky sewer rat comes across an unlooted chamber, and then a cache of ancient Tevinter relics spread through the black market. We must search below the city. Underneath a cobblestone with curious markings, faintly glowing, it is signed the Band of Three. So, again, this place used to be a Tevinter slave pub. So you got to imagine that the Magisters and Imperium presence here would have stashed and hidden all kinds of relics in all kinds of places. And when the slaves revolted and had their uprising, they probably stole things and stashed them too, to sell at a later date, and then died to the choke damp or the retaking of the city or in the fights. So there's probably a bunch of very old, very blood magic related relics and rituals all over this city. The Raiders of the Waking Sea. The Raiders of the Waking Sea, or simply the Raiders, is the common name given to an association of Antivan pirates called the Felicissima Armada. These pirates were once little more than opportunists, based out of the coastal city of Lemerin. That preyed on sea traffic, and Lemerin is the place where the Canary Accords were made for the peace treaty between the Canary and the Chantry. So it's interesting that the place where that accord came from is a pirate hub. They were often targeted by Orlesian and Free Marcher cities that were bent on destroying the pirates once and for all. After each such effort, new pirates would appear to fill the vacuum. During the new Exalted Marches, the nations of Thedas needed every ship they could muster against the massive power of the Canary dreadnoughts. The Lemerin pirates were faced with a difficult decision. They had to band together under one flag and fight with those they had previously preyed upon, or face conversion and annihilation by the Canary. Thus the Armada was formed. The pirates brought their knowledge of stealth and trickery to bear, plaguing Canary supply lines and even launching seaborne invasions against the Canary coast. For a time, it was said the Armada was the premier naval power of Thedas, and after the signing of the Lemerin Accord, they maintained their association rather than disband as many had hoped. Wealthy merchants now often pay the leaders of the Armada rather than risking their ships commandeered and their merchandise stolen and sold on the black market. The Armada is hardly unified, and bloody battles between Armada leaders are frequent, but when faced with an attack by outsiders, the group instantly puts aside their differences and closes ranks. The Raiders have thus become far more of a threat in the last century than they ever were before. There is many a legend told about how dashing and romantic life aboard a Raider vessel is, but do not believe it. They are scoundrels and smugglers all. From the Dowager's Field Guide to Good Society by Lady Alcyone. That's interesting that they basically ended up becoming a pirate commission. It's interesting that they all band together whenever there's an outside threat faced. I think if more nations were like that, if they just banded together to deal with the outside issue instead of fighting within, you can become a real force when there's no disagreements, and I'm sure that's a lot of the reason why nobody fucks with them, even when there is infighting, because they know as soon as they do, the infighting is going to stop, and you're going to have to deal with the whole thing. And again, it's all about trade and money and commerce. and the Raiders of the Waking Sea have a great way to mess with commerce, which is why they hold so much political clout in the ocean. Slavery in the Tevinter Imperium. Slavery still thrives in Thedas. Even if the trade has been outlawed, who hasn't heard the tales of poverty-stricken elves lured into ships by the prospect of well-paying jobs in Antiva, only to find themselves clapped in leg irons once at sea? And humans fall prey to this too. If they're lucky, they end up in Orlais, which has only servants. Most nobles treat them decently because they are afraid of admitting the truth. Orlesians go to great lengths to maintain the fiction that slavery is illegal. Of course, the greatest consumer of slave labor is the Tevinter Imperium, which would surely crumble if not for the endless supply of slaves from all over the continent. There, they are meat chattel. They are beaten, used as fodder in the endless war against the Canare, and even serve as components in dark magic rituals. From Black City, Black Divine, a study of the Tevinter Imperium by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. And there you have it again, the Orlesians, they're in slavery, but at least they have the decency to mask it, right? And they treat them good, but it's still slavery at the end of the day. They're still pieces of shit. And then, of course, here you have Tevinter, the London, literally founded on slavery, and I really didn't appreciate the way Veilguard tried to whitewash this, because this is what it is. This is in Codex, cemented in history of every single Dragon Age game before it, that this is what Tevinter is like. And there's really none of this inside Tevinter in the Veilguard, but this is why whenever we run into Tevinters, I have no problem cutting the heads off. This stuff. The Cardinal Rules of Magic. You must not be under the misimpression that magic is all-powerful. There are limits, and not even the greatest mages may overcome them. No one, for instance, has found any means of traveling, either over great distances or small ones, beyond putting one foot in front of the other. The immutable nature of the physical world prevents this, so no, you may not simply pop over to Minrathos to borrow a cup of sugar, nor may you magic the essay you forgot in the apprentice dormitory to your desk. You will simply have to be prepared. I see whoever wrote this does not know about illuvians, but I suppose they aren't casting spells that is a magical item. So I guess it's not the same thing, but technically, the illuvians are a way to fast travel via magic. Similarly, even when you send your mind into the Fade, your body remains behind. Only once has this barrier been overcome, and reputedly the spell required 2/3 of delirium in the Tevinter Imperium, as well as the lifeblood of several hundred slaves. The results were utterly disastrous. Finally, life is finite. A truly great healer may bring someone back from the very precipice of death, when breath and heartbeat have ceased, but the spirit still clings to life. But once the spirit has fled the body, it cannot be recalled. That is no failing of your skills or power, it is simply reality. From the Lectures of First Enchanter Wencelas. The Tranquil. The Tranquil are the least understood, but most visible members of the Circle. Every city of respectable size boasts a circle of magi shop, and every one of these shops is run by a Tranquil proprietor. The name is misnomer, for they are not tranquil at all. Rather, they are like inanimate objects that speak. If a table wished to sell you an enchanted penknife, it could pass as one of these people. Their eyes are expressionless, their voices monotone. Incomparable craftsmen they might be, but they are hardly the sort of mages to put ordinary folk at ease. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. I actually find the practice of tranquility to be reprehensible. Cutting you off from your dreams and emotions, and having you be this monotone, feeling emotionless slave, basically, with no opinions or preferences. I would rather be hung at the gallows than have this. If I was a mage, I would sooner them execute me on sight than deal with this. Of course, Tranquil serve their purpose, right? There's parts of the Chantry that are pretty bad, and when you have an option between killing somebody or using them as a servant, basically, to peddle your wares and clean up, then, well, if you need a new servant, you would just Tranquil them. And, I mean, this is going to get a little dark, but I suppose there's plenty of other abuses you could do with Tranquils too, because they have no opinion. They'll do whatever you say, so there's a lot to be taken advantage of there. That's all I'll say on that, but I'm sure the reason the Tranquil are so numerous and such a common practice is not purely monetary. The pickled apples of Arlathan. I expressed my incredulity to the shop's assistant, who coldly noted that he did not like my implication. He insisted that every article in the Black Emporium was genuine, no fakes, imitations, or cheap knockoffs. I must have appeared unconvinced, for the assistant narrowed his eyes at me and disappeared into the bowels of the shop, returning several minutes later. He removed the jar of pickled apples from its display case, and proceeded to carefully, reverentially, remove the wax seal from the lid of the jar. I watched with fascination as the jar was opened, and a single rosy apple pulled from it. It looked as if it had been picked just that day, at the peak of ripeness. With a paring knife, the assistant cut the tiniest sliver of flesh from the apple, and presented it to me. The flavor of that one small sliver was astonishing. It was as close to a perfect apple as ever there was. I was experiencing the essence of every apple ever eaten, and that ever will be eaten. When it was over, the sense of loss that filled me was sharp enough to move me to tears. The rest of the apple was returned to the jar, which was then resealed. I paid 5 sovereigns for that single taste, and I believe I got the better part of the bargain. From the letters of Brother Ferdinand Genitive to Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. The Box of Screaming. I received the box from a man I met in the Silent Plains. He spoke little and would not reveal his name. For reasons I shall not detail here, I had been kidnapped and left for dead in that grey, wind-blasted wasteland. I think the Silent Plains are where the first Blight took place, right? The big battle with Dumont and the Grey Wardens? I think that's the Silent Plains. After days of walking, I was parched and close to death. I was about to dash my head on a rock to speed my passing when the man arrived. He possessed a water skin containing ample water for a person traveling from our location to the Imperial Highway. From there, he said, I could find my way to Solus, or Paravantium. He offered to give me the water skin if I agreed to take 3 things from him: a glowing crystalline shard, a bronze sphere, and an iron-bound box with no hinges. I asked the man if he wished to have these items delivered. He said that he merely wanted me to have them. It was an odd request, but I was too weak and too desperate to think much of it, and so I agreed. The man put the items into a leather sack, which he handed to me along with the water. What about you? I asked. He said nothing, only pointed in the direction from which I had come. There is nothing that way, I said. He merely smiled at me. I found the Imperial Highway about a day later, and a caravan driver agreed to take me to Paravantium in exchange for the large glowing shard. In Paravantium, I bartered the bronze sphere for new clothes and a room at the inn. That night, I examined the iron-bound box and found no way to open it. I held it to my ear, and thought I heard slow, measured breathing coming from within. My mind was afire with curiosity, and I obtained from the innkeeper a large hammer, thinking to smash the thing open. The moment the hammer touched the box, it shrieked. The shrill sound pierced the depths of my soul. I gave the box to the innkeeper in the morning and felt better for having rid myself of it. A page torn from a mysterious journal on display in the Black Emporium. I would be very curious to see what this is about. This kind of sounds like some Going to Rodim kind of thing from The Witcher 3, or He Who Was from Baldur's Gate 3. That sounds like that kind of figure. He knew exactly what the guy needed. And the box of screams, I mean, let's be honest, if you gave me a box with no hinges and when I touched it, it screeched at me, I'm leaving that thing on the side of the road and I'm driving away at 200 miles an hour. We're not doing that. We got one more here for the Emporium objects. So, although this wax-stoppered vessel is clearly labeled Tears Shed During the Burning of Treviso, many questions remain, not the least of which is, which burning of Treviso? When the Canary conquered it in 635 steel? When it was burned by the liberating armies of the White and Black Divines during the Second Exalted March of 752 Storm? Or when it accidentally burned to the ground in 862 Blessed after a dockhand knocked over a lantern in a warehouse full of lamp oil? Even assuming the correct answer could be determined, the question of whose tears have been collected remains. Presumably not any of the numerous fire victims, surviving relatives perhaps, nobles with summer homes on the Antivan coast. It should be noted that nowhere on the label does it say that these tears were shed in relation to the event, so they could have been the tears of a woman in Montsamard, weeping because she was not asked to dance at the last costume ball, unaware that at that very moment one of the greatest port cities of Thedas was aflame. From the letters of Brother Ferdinand Genitive to Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Got a couple characters here to go on, so... Anders. Magic is a tool, same as a bow or sword. Would you cut off a child's hands to ensure he never wields one in anger? That is an absurd analogy. Magic is a tool, but there are certain tools that are an issue. So I would apply this to firearms, right? I think when there's a lot of shootings, I don't think you ban the gun, right? I think you stop bad people from having said gun. The difference is, magic is not a tool because you can't take it from somebody. It is an inherent gift. You can't stop psychopaths from having the tool. There's no way to check. There's no way to take it away if you know that they are. Like if you have a mage that's on Prozac and he's looking a little shady, listening to emo music, you can't exactly confiscate the fireball, can you? And you can't confiscate the ability to make a deal with a demon. So that is an absurdity. Anders has a rocky history with the Circle of Magi. Taken from his family when his talents first manifested, Anders was still a boy the first time he ran away from the Circle. Recaptured and returned dozens of times, Anders was still considered only a reckless scamp by First Enchanter Irving, who thought his easy temper and sense of humor made him no true threat. But during his final escape, Anders befriended the Warden Commander of Amaranthine and accepted an offer to become a Grey Warden. Life as a Warden changed him, introducing him to the free fade spirit called Justice, who slowly convinced Anders to turn his attention beyond his personal suffering. Infused with Justice's fervor, Anders offered to merge with the spirit in the name of mage freedom, starting them both down a dangerous path that turned the purity of justice into the unthinking hatred of vengeance. So I want you to remember a couple things whenever Anders talks about the plight of the mages and how it's all bad and it's all terrible and you die just for thinking. Look at this right here. Anders was still a boy when he ran away from the Circle. Recaptured and returned dozens of times. So, when he tells you that you're executed for having an opinion, I want you to understand that he's escaped the Circle like 20-something times. And they never executed him. They never made him tranquil. They never clapped him in irons and locked him up for the rest of his days. In fact, he's here right now. So when Anders talks about the plight of the mages and how bad things are, take it with a grain of salt because he has an agenda and he's not telling you the truth. Fenris. Even those who live without chains are still bound by fear, by tradition, by honor. Slaves dream of freedom, but I have found free men dream of it even more. Fenris was a slave, a bodyguard to Magister Denarius of the In The Imperium, until his escape several years ago. He speaks little of his past, saying only that he most recently came to Kirkwall from Tantivale in the north. The markings on his skin are akin to rune crafting, made of lyrium and ink. They suffuse Fenris's flesh with a power even he does not fully understand. The process of their creation was painful, and in unguarded moments, Fenris attempts to control the agony that lingers still. Even so, the markings enhance his fighting skill, and have made him a unique and formidable warrior. Isabela. I'm Isabela, previously Captain Isabela. Sadly, without my ship, the title rings a bit hollow. Isabela is vague about her days as a sea captain, though it's obvious she was involved with piracy and smuggling. Shortly after the Blight ended, Isabela's ship was caught in a storm near the Wounded Coast. The vessel was destroyed, and Isabela feels lucky to have escaped with her life. Now she's stranded in the Free Marches, spending most of her time in the Hanged Man Tavern. Isabela also reveals that she was born in Ravane, but spent many years in Antiva. When asked about those years, she changes the subject. So she's a little like Liliana here. She's going to have moments where she won't tell us the whole truth, and as our friendship evolves, she'll be revealing more on that. Xenon the Antiquarian. You received the invitation? Then you are fortunate indeed. Xenon is no ordinary man. as you will discover for yourself when you enter the Black Emporium. The item you'll see resting in the chair is not one of the displays. Rather, it is the proprietor. It may speak to you. That's Xenon, using the mystical bauble that has allowed him to communicate since he lost the power of speech. The story tells that Xenon was a Kirkwall nobleman in the Age of Steel, almost 300 years ago. Obsessed with the pursuit of eternal life, he made a deal with a powerful witch, some say it was the legendary Antivan, Witch of the Wares, and his wish was granted. He obtained eternal life, but not eternal youth. His body became decrepit, and he used his vast wealth to seek out ways to preserve it. Some were magical, many were dangerous, and almost all of them were unsuccessful. What remains is an immobile mass of twisted flesh, and I think Xenon's mind has slowly decayed along with his body. He hid away in the Undercity, and has slowly amassed a collection that's sure to amaze. If he invited you, he thinks you have the coin he needs to further his research for a cure. Just don't think of stealing anything. The golem is not for show. Although you're free to look around the shop, I wouldn't suggest staying over long. You might be present for one of the baths his servant gives him hourly to keep his flesh from becoming completely desiccated. Trust me, you don't want that. From a letter of unknown origin, 849 Blessed. And that is us all caught up and up to date on the codexes so far. So, thank you for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, leave a like and a comment. If you want to support the cause and help improve the channel and you enjoy what I do here, please do check out my Patreon in the link in the description below. Otherwise, stay tuned and I'll see you soon with more Dragon Age 2. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.